What's up? Welcome back to my channel, or for the first time if you're new, I'm Sylvan, and today I'm going to be reacting to Columbina's character trailer, To Where She Flies. I am incredibly excited for this. I am highly anticipating this new version, and Columbina is a character I'm absolutely pulling for. I love her character, I love her vibes, and I'm excited to see where this version leads her, seeing as we had like nothing of her in the special program, outside of obviously her kit. And her teaser didn't necessarily give us too much of what's going on with her. So I'm very curious to see if this gives us more, or if it is, like plenty of trailers, just going to be a bit more vibes based. But we'll only find out if we start, so feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and consider becoming a channel member if you want to support me just that little bit extra. And let's get into this. Okay, her with a few balloons in the fucking void or something. Curious. I'm already visually liking this quite a bit. Ooh. This is some familiar sounds. Ooh, I love the 2D water. Her face mask. Donning the mask, okay. Huh. And yet she catches a feather, okay. Ooh. Her time. Ooh, who are these guys? For a second I thought they were like Fatui or something, but no, those are distinct characters. Ooh. The music here is really cool. I'm liking this a lot. Those look a bit more Fatui. So those earlier ones I feel were representing the Moon Chanters, and then she leaves to the Fatui as she chases after this feather. Huh. Ooh. And then she's at the festival, okay. Hesitation. The music's really good right now. Oh, and then that's the doctor, all right. He's controlling the music, the song, the pace of everything. Ooh. The composer of it all. Interesting. I'm loving this, just visually. Oh. 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 Who is that supposed to be? Is it us? Ooh, but then she lifts them up after they catch her. Interesting. I love her wings, by the way. And thus, the two of them dance. Okay. I love her wings. She catches sight. Ooh. The lead vocal coming in there, and all of these puppets turning to like birds. Wow, okay. God, I love her eyes. Huh. Ooh. That glitch. God, that looks beautiful. Whoa. Wrapped in strings, continuing to sing. Huh. And the ooh. And she's gone. Ooh. Oh? A 2D element? Huh. Wow. Huh. That is such a visually distinct demo or trailer. This is a fucking beautiful trailer. I love the route they went with this. I feel like it matches Columbina perfectly. This is absolutely a vibes trailer, and I love it for that. As much as I love new details and lore, we can save that for the actual story. It's vibe time. and this delivers the vibes. So the way I view the events of this trailer are essentially as this dance and song and theatrical interpretive retelling of Columbina's life up to this point. That is what it speaks to me as. At least the majority of this trailer. The very beginning is the main part that I feel like doesn't immediately fit into that. So let's look at that first, and then we'll get into this performance put on by Columbina and, to an extent, the Doctor. We start with her in this essentially void space with 3 balloons scooping up this glistening sand or dust that slips through her fingers. This sort of speaks to me as perhaps where she ended up after she went through the moon gate. The balloons speak to me as almost what she's holding on to from the festival, shortly before the Doctor made his move. But regardless of what this space is, it really works to set the tone of her being alone. And the sand or dust slipping through her fingers as she scoops it up inevitably to me speaks of having some inner meaning to it, some kind of thematic purpose or something like that. And obviously the immediate things that come to mind are the classic metaphors and such of things slipping through your fingers, not being able to hold on the things you want to hold on to, time passing you by without being able to get a grasp on the present, all that kind of stuff, which perhaps could be a way of representing her seeming loss of being able to be with us, or the fact that Dottore took away her chance at reaching the moon. There's a lot of possibilities here, and I don't feel confident about any of them. I feel like it could just be a visual, but at the same time, I feel like it could have a meaning that I'm just not landing on perfectly. But then, as she willingly drops some of this sand in a stream, we follow it as it turns into shooting stars with the birds following behind. A really interesting transition, once again, feels packed with meaning that I just can't quite grasp. Of course, shooting stars are something that visualize this idea of traversing the cosmos, traversing the skies, something that if Columbina were capable of doing, she could reach the moon, perhaps. Similarly, the birds that get introduced in this moment, that she ends up chasing after to a degree later on, could be filling a similar position of this idea of yearning to be able to fly, to escape this place that rejects her, to reach a place she belongs, despite the fact that she cannot truly fly. That's where my mind is going for this. But then, interestingly enough, sort of opposite of what I was just talking about, we see these shooting stars from a different perspective on the ground of Nod Cry, looking up to them as they fall down towards the ground. Inevitably very reminiscent to the Wish animation, and given that immediately after this shot is Columbina swathed in water holding what I would assume to be her moon marrow, it associates the two, at least in my mind, which then perhaps is a representation of her falling into this world, falling into Tevat. Whether that is supposed to be a representation of her first being born into this world as a new moon goddess, or it's supposed to be her returning to Tevat after going through the moon gate. I'm not entirely sure which it's meant to be, but they are both possibilities. But then we get this shot pulling out from the previous one to reveal the water swirling around her, then is further surrounded by this double crescent symbol that we have constantly seen in Nod Cry. With her forming this centerpiece with the water swirling around her in a sphere, it results in her taking the place of the third moon, representing her position in the sort of hierarchy of the moons. She is the one that is living, where the other two are these hollowed out crescents with no life in them. Perhaps what this is trying to represent. And then we watch her as she steps slowly through this other ambiguous space, holding the little fabric mask that she wears over her eyes. Notably, in the previous shot of her holding the little moon marrow, she doesn't have the mask on, as well as in the very beginning here. So she does not have the mask at any point prior to when it's shown to us and she puts it on. Once again, I don't know if this is supposed to represent her putting it on for the first time, shrouding away her eyes. Once again, I do not know if this is supposed to be the first time she's put it on, or just her putting it on again after however long she kept it off, but it does draw attention to the mask. Why does she wear it? Is it to hide away her eyes from others? Is it to avoid looking at others, at other things, at the world that rejects her? The things beyond the world she would rather not see? I'm not entirely sure, but I bring this up because it draws attention to her putting it back on, And we are beginning to see her open her eyes later on, which I feel like holds importance given that she's kept her eyes closed the entirety of the time we've known her. What does it mean for her to open her eyes, to remove the mask? Is it to finally face the world, to finally accept the world and its people, choose to be a part of this world even if it tries to reject her? Is it to perceive truths that she otherwise could not or denied in the past? I don't really know, but I posit this nonetheless because I feel like it's important. Moving on from the eyes, we then once again have imagery of all of these birds, now around her, and even this glowing blue one nestled in her hands, until they all begin to fly away, most notably towards the moon. This is very much where my idea of the birds representing Columbina wishing she could reach the moon, wishing she could fly up into the sky to a place that she can call home, that she can belong. Something the birds can do with ease, but she has no capability of. Hence why she chases after them, tries to get a hold of this feather that drops in this next shot. But it could also very much represent something else, something more potentially. Either way though, once she starts following and chasing after this single feather, we enter more directly into this interpretive, dance-filled retelling of her life, essentially. Which, if we were to use to contextualize the previous parts, it could perhaps be that all of what we were seeing prior is her sort of coming into this world in a interpretive sense and metaphorical sense, falling into it as a new god, donning a mask to hide away from others, serve this role that she perhaps does not completely identify with, and even just from the start yearn to reach the moon. But I'm not 100% confident in that. And regardless, the part of this trailer that I am much more interested in just sort of feeling out and looking at is this interpretive dance theater performance of sorts. I feel like there's a lot to get out of it. First off, this first set of puppet/performers, because they do have a bit of that puppet vibe. They all wear masks and are seemingly identical, and all are just playing their parts to a degree. This first collection of performers resembles the Moonchanters, having the blue and white color scheme and the horns on their masks. And we can see a representation of the Moonchanters' role in Columbina's life. They kneel to her and then follow behind her and follow her every movement and attention. Hand over their heart, they follow her gaze as she looks to the feather. They kneel reverently, reaching their hands out towards the thing that Columbina has given value, valuing it themselves. Of course, we know this led to them seeing her more as a god than as a person. Every little action she took, they placed incredible value in. And I think that is a bit of what we see here with this first set of performers. They have one of the more elaborate and in-sync pieces of the entire performance, forming these circles around her as they raise her up. The birds trying to lift her on strings. But the fact that they're lifting her on strings speaks to me, first off, as just sort of arbitrarily reminding me of the balloons at the beginning, but I don't think that's intentional, as much as it is intentional to imply that she is on strings. Though she is being raised up, it is far from reaching the moon and is much more putting her on a pedestal. They attach these strings to her as they attach what they expect of her to their perception of her. She is a goddess who gives wisdom and blessings, not a person with needs of their own. But perhaps another way of looking at it is that the birds actually are carrying her out of that situation, away from the Moonchanters, signaling her separation from them and joining of the Fatui. They lift her up into this space that becomes mechanical, something that speaks the visual language of the Fatui much more than anything else. And from here we enter the second phase of this performance, the second set of performers. These ones seemingly much less concerned with what Columbina is doing, where the Moonchanter performers moved in reaction to her and in tandem with her. The Fatui performers here are much more of a militaristic machine of sorts. They are all in lockstep, moving in this way that resembles a march, seemingly unreactive to Columbina moving through their ranks, and even blocking her path as she reaches towards the feather, impeding her. But she moves past them, dipping and dodging around them, nearly reaching the feather, only for countless hands to reach out towards her. I see this as the Fatui, and more specificity likely Dattore, reaching out to claim her and her power. The Tsaritsa welcomed her as a harbinger for a reason. one we do not know, but it was for a reason. Dottore seeks her power for his plans. The Fatui view her as an asset. And so as she reaches towards this feather, this thing that may grant her the power to reach the moon, these other forces try to grab hold of her to use her power for their own gain, which results in her not reaching that feather, grabbing hold of her arms, pulling her down, and transitioning very directly into this child dressed up as Columbina at the festival. And here we see Columbina begin to reach out to try to help the child who fell, only to hesitate. She's learned at this point to not stick out, to hide. She wants to help people, she is a kind person at the end of the day, but she struggles to get close to people and is aware that there could be consequences if she shows herself too openly. But then in this moment, as she hesitates, the ground under her feet suddenly is that of a beach, the tide washing in over her feet. Immediately, my mind goes to the moon and the tides. Where she's trying to reach, where she believes she belongs, is the very thing that controls these waters. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it is what jumps out at me about this visual. I don't necessarily know how it ties back to her hesitancy, though, or the immediate next bit. I'm not entirely sure. There's a lot of stuff here that just feels right out of my reach, much like that feather and the moon for her. But given that these waters move in immediately prior to the spotlight on Dottore, makes me associate with him actually more than anything. Perhaps a show of Columbina being caught in his trap, a show of him gaining control over the moon marrows, being visualized by that of the tides themselves under his command. Regardless of what the water is meant to represent, it serves to introduce Dottore's role in all of this. He is not a dancer, he is not one of the performers. He is the musician, the composer of all of this. This nearly discordant sound that the piano plays, symbolizing to me the ominous and concerning danger of what Dottore is up to, how he has orchestrated the events to his benefit. And as his performance becomes the center stage, suddenly these third set of performers appear, rising up as the colors and symbols of the wild hunt of Rerir begin to appear. Dottore's part in all of this has begun. Almost certainly this represents our battle with Rerir, or at the very least his appearance. And once again, the fact that Dottore's performance is what brings in this element of the wild hunt in this third set of performers leads to the idea that he is the one who orchestrated those events, at least to a limited degree. But we see here how these performers differ from the previous two sets. The Moon Chanters followed her every movement, reacting to her every choice. The Fatui were in lockstep, even if it resulted in her impediment, and even sought her own power for their use. Here, the representations of Rerir in the Wild Hunt directly engage with her, crossing paths with her, representing this conflict, this battle with Rerir in the Wild Hunt. But throughout this scene, as it grows more elaborate, it never lets us forget who is the one behind the song. Dottore is putting on this performance, playing the tune that the Wild Hunt dances to, until finally there's the introduction of this other distinct performer, a figure of gold and white and blue, colors that I would most closely associate with us, the Traveler, and the fact that this figure is shown catching Columbina as she falls backwards, seemingly halting the other performers, halting the Wild Hunt. It once again speaks to me as our influence in protecting and saving Columbina, in befriending her, entering her life, aiding her in coming out of her shell and into the world and learning about it and befriending other people, forging more bonds in this world. And the fact that when this figure appears is when the mask dissipates, her wings manifest, and she opens her eyes, I think speaks volumes about the meaning behind that. If I am right in assuming that that golden white figure is us, the Traveler, or even just a representation of the people she cares about that she grew closer to during the story, the fact that our appearance is what then directly leads to her opening her eyes, manifesting her wings, the very things that would enable her to get to the moon, once again, I believe is very interpretive and representative of the sequence of events that we experienced and will experience. We, in a sense, gave her her wings, gave her her opportunity to go to the moon, even if it failed. We are the one who led her to embracing her name, to accepting an identity. And it's that I think I would point to for her opening her eyes and what that means. The accepting of herself as a person and what that means. Prior to our appearance and our aid and the help of everyone in Nodcry, Columbina would not see herself as Columbina, would not exist as a person. She would have faded away. She only exists now by the acknowledgement of herself. And I feel that is what the dissipating of the mask and opening of her eyes is. Not acting as this empty vessel just moving through life that will eventually fade, not donning a mask that others have given to her, but looking outward and forward with a perspective unique to herself. That is what this speaks to me as. And with these new wings on her back, she lifts up this golden white figure up into the night sky with her and begins a dance. And within this dance, she takes on the leading role of the song as well, singing out, making herself known. And in doing so, all of the Wild Hunt performers, now visibly hanging on strings, burst into light, turning into birds that fly upward, perhaps representing a blooming of power. It speaks to me of this idea that self-actualization is the key to her reaching her truest potential. By embracing herself and what she is and who she is and what she wants herself to be, that is when she can spread her wings and sing and fly. And only now, with her eyes open, her wings spread wide, does the glowing bird return to her. Not just its feather, but the bird itself, only for her singing to be cut off by Dottore. Almost certainly this represents her ascending towards the moon in our attempt to get her there after the festival, only for Dottore to steal her away alongside the other moon marrows. This act of self-actualization, of flourishing, of becoming everything she wishes to be, is ripped away by the one manipulating this entire song. And only now do we reveal that these strands and strings that were being shown to us in these previous shots have wrapped themselves around her, and the bird that has come to her is nothing but a glitching hologram of an illusion. She has spread her wings, but now she is trapped. Her eyes are once again closed as she seemingly sleeps in this bound state. But notably, she does not stop singing. That continues. She may be trapped at this moment, but she is taking an active role in this performance now, no matter how small. And then it's here that we return back to this sand falling through her fingers visual again. Now she watches it fall out of her hands, her eyes open. Once again, I can't quite figure out exactly how it fits together with everything else, but it is something very evocative to me. But then as she closes her hands over the last light, shadow casting over her, we watch as seemingly she too turns into feathers. The strands coming loose, nothing left to hold. In one sense, this could be seen as her being lost, falling apart, unraveling, becoming nothing. But that is not the final shot. Instead, we show her in 2D, interestingly enough. Her wings manifested, her eyes still open, no threads tying her up in sight. Much more what it speaks to me as is, once again, this interpretive representation of her being snared into Torre's web, only to escape out of it by her own means. Even if it throws her into the void, she does not let herself be trapped in that web. It's incredibly interesting in so many ways to me. This trailer is once again ultimately just a retelling of her story, but it's just once again done in such an interesting way, both visually and audibly. It really is sticking in my brain, and though I don't necessarily have too much more to say about it, I'm thinking about it still. But with all that said, I think before I finish out the video, I want to look at the description real quick, because I think it helps to further solidify what I'm talking about. Her steps echoed through frost-bitten woods and snow-locked palaces, guided only by a fleeting image of home that danced at her fingertips. Though she escaped the shadows that once pursued her, the threads of fate still hold fast. Still, she lifts her wings, longing for a place to finally belong. This, as well, is a retelling of her life. frostbitten woods and snow-locked palaces, her time with the Frostmoon Scions, and her time with the Fatui. Guided only by a fleeting image of home that danced at her fingertips, that is the feather we were seeing. That glimpse of the moon through the false sky, that feeling of it drawing her. And though she escaped these shadows that pursued her, whether that is the Doctor or something else, the threads of fate, those threads that were tying her up, still hold fast. And yet, she refuses to give up. She still lifts her wings, longing for that place of belonging. She continues to search. She continues to yearn for that place. And at the end of the day, with that description and just the entire demo as a whole, this trailer really just is so cohesively strong to me. I really, really like it. But once again, I don't really have too much more else to say about it, I think. So, though I'm going to continue thinking about this, I think I'll leave the video here. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and very special thanks to all of my channel members, including Amorphosilica, Desaize, Pokelove, and Unusual Echo at the normal tier, and Kano Nano at the cool person tier. Really appreciate your support, as always, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye!